Let me say this first. I'm not crazy. I know how this sounds. Paranoid, unhinged, maybe even delusional. But I swear on everything I have that what I'm about to tell you actually happened. It started with faces, or more accurately, strangers who said things they shouldn't have known. Things only one person in the world could have told them. 3 months ago, I ended a 2-year relationship with my ex, Marcus. He wasn't violent, he never hit me, but he was controlling in a quiet, calculating way, the kind that makes you question your own memory. He'd track when I used my phone, quiz me about my day to see if my answers matched up, and call me sunshine in this sarcastic, mocking tone whenever I was upset. After I left him, I changed my number, deleted my social media, and moved to a new apartment in Anchorage, Alaska, just in time for the Christmas season. I thought I was finally free. Then the barista called me Sunshine, and I realized Marcus had found a way to haunt me without ever being there. It was a Tuesday morning, 2 weeks before Christmas. I stopped by a small coffee shop near my new apartment, a place I'd only been to once before. The barista, a girl about my age, smiled at me as I walked up to the counter. "Good morning, Sunshine," she said. I froze. Sunshine. That was Marcus's nickname for me. Not a common one, his own twisted creation. He'd say it whenever I was upset, like he enjoyed watching me flinch at the word. I convinced myself it was a coincidence. Maybe she called everyone that. But a few days later, I took a rideshare to work. The driver, an older man in his 50s, kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror. Finally, he spoke. "Ever figure out what you're running from?" My stomach dropped. Marcus had asked me that exact question once, after I told him I needed space to figure myself out. He'd leaned close and said, "Ever figure out what you're running from?" with this smug look on his face. "What did you say?" I asked the driver. He just chuckled and shook his head, like I was in on some inside joke. I got out of the car shaking. It kept happening. A woman at the grocery store bumped into me and whispered, "You don't get to just disappear." A man on the street said, "Still wearing your hair like that," as he passed. Someone in my apartment building hummed a song Marcus used to play during our fights and said, "You always liked this song." It wasn't their faces that scared me. It was their eyes. They all had different faces, but their expressions were the same. Like they knew me, like they'd been told about me. I thought I was losing my mind, so I did something I'm not proud of. I messaged Marcus's sister and told her to make him stop. She texted back the next day, "I don't know what you're talking about. Marcus is in rehab. He's been there for 6 weeks with no phone." I didn't believe her. Not until she posted a photo of him on Facebook a week later, pale, thin, holding a sobriety chip. So it couldn't be Marcus, at least not directly. But someone was doing this. Someone was hiring people to say his words, mimic his patterns, and make sure I never felt safe. One night, I stayed late at work because I didn't want to go home. My apartment didn't feel safe anymore. Around 10 p.m., I finally forced myself to leave. I walked the 10 minutes to my building, headphones in, but no music playing, something I'd learned to do so I could still hear if someone was following me. When I turned onto my street, I saw a man sitting on the steps across from my building. His hood was up, his head down. I tried to walk past him without looking. "Cold out tonight, huh, Sunshine?" he said. I stopped. He didn't look up, just stared at the ground like he was reading something on the pavement. I ran the rest of the way to my building, locked every bolt on the door, and sat on the couch for hours, listening to every sound. The next morning, I found my doormat flipped over. Someone had been there. On the underside, scribbled in pen, were the words, "You can change your face too if you want, but I'll still recognize you." I threw up in the sink. That day, I booked a hotel. I didn't even pack a bag, I just left. I needed to be somewhere with people, somewhere public. The hotel clerk gave me a room on the 4th floor. It was small and quiet, but it felt safe. Until 2 a.m. when someone knocked on my door. 3 slow knocks.
I sat up in bed and waited. They knocked again. I looked through the peephole. A woman, maybe in her 40s, stood there with a completely blank expression. She stared straight at the door, not moving, not blinking. I didn't make a sound. Eventually, she left. The next morning, I asked the front desk if anyone had come by my room. They said no one should have been on my floor. All the rooms were empty. That's when it clicked. These weren't random people. Someone was hiring them. Someone was giving them scripts, phrases Marcus used, details about my life, and sending them to find me. Marcus didn't need to be the one knocking. He just needed other people to do it for him. I remembered a conversation we had months before the breakup. Marcus had mentioned a forum he was part of, a place where people shared tactics. He made it sound like self-improvement, but looking back, it sounded like something darker, some kind of psychological game. Someone, probably Marcus, had hired people to say his words, mimic his patterns, and make sure I never felt safe. It wasn't traditional stalking. It was worse. He'd turned himself into a ghost that could possess anyone. I moved again, dyed my hair, told my friends not to tell anyone where I was. It worked for a while. Then, last week, I was walking home from a bookstore when a woman passed me on the street. "Still hiding behind books, sunshine," she said, without even glancing at me. I don't think this will ever stop. Maybe Marcus paid some service to do this for a year. Maybe he made it public, some sick game where strangers compete to scare me. I can't trust anyone's face anymore. The paranoia is eating me alive, and I don't know how to make it stop. My partner Emma and I moved into our dream house in Fairbanks, Alaska, right before Christmas. Everything about it felt perfect. The snow-covered yard, the cozy fireplace, our rescue cat Whiskers curled up by the tree. We thought we'd found our forever home. But the house to our right changed everything. It sat empty, half-renovated, like someone had just walked away mid-project. The owner had torn down the fence between our backyards and never replaced it, leaving both properties wide open to each other. Behind that abandoned house was another property, separated by a fence. Several young men lived there, and we'd sometimes see them cutting through the empty house's yard to reach the street. At first, we didn't think much of it. Maybe they knew the owner, maybe they had permission. We were just two couples trying to enjoy our first Christmas in our new home. We had no idea what was coming. Our first night in the house, we sat in the backyard watching the northern lights dance across the sky. The December cold bit at our faces, but we didn't care. We were home. That's when Emma grabbed my arm. "Look," she whispered, pointing at the house behind us. A man stood in an upstairs window staring down at us, not glancing, staring. His face was blank, expressionless, and the room behind him was completely dark. He didn't move, didn't blink, just watched. "Maybe he's just curious about the new neighbors," I said, trying to sound calm. But after 30 minutes of that dead stare, we went inside and locked the doors. The next few days passed normally. I went to work at the Christmas tree lot while Emma unpacked boxes and hung decorations. We tried to forget about the man in the window. But 3 nights later, we made the mistake of going back outside. We were sitting by our fire pit, drinking hot chocolate and looking at the stars when we heard the wooden fence boards being moved. 3 men appeared in our yard, standing there, staring at us. "Can we help you?" I asked, my voice shaking. The youngest one, maybe late 20s, held a large garbage bag. He smiled and pulled out bottles of laundry detergent. "Want to buy some soap? Got it cheap." "No thanks," I said quickly. He shrugged, smiled wider, and said, "Okay." Then they all just left. What scared me most wasn't the stolen soap. It was how they walked into our yard like they owned it, like they had every right to be there. After that, they came back more often. They'd lift the fence, walk through the abandoned house's yard, and stand in hours watching us through the windows, always at night, always uninvited. One afternoon, I was cleaning the front windows when 2 police officers walked around the side of our house without knocking. They went straight into the abandoned property, lifted the fence, looked around for a few minutes, then left. They didn't explain anything. A few days later, they knocked on our door. "The house behind you is empty now. The tenants were evicted for causing trouble with the neighbors. You shouldn't have any more problems." We were relieved, but relief didn't last long. 3 days later, I was taking a bath when I heard a loud crash outside. I threw on clothes and ran to find Emma. She was in the spare bedroom, phone in hand, recording something out the window. "What's wrong?" I asked. She held up a finger to silence me, then showed me the video. A man we'd never seen before had pointed up at our window. When Emma looked out, he sprinted toward our house at full speed, tried our door handle, then ran back and started smashing the windows of the empty house next door. We called the police immediately. They came, watched the video, took notes, and left. We barely slept that night. 2 nights later, at 2:16 a.m., we heard whistling, the kind men do to harass women on the street. Then someone tapped on our bedroom window. We checked our security cameras, but they didn't record anything. Whoever it was must have left quickly. We were too terrified to stay, so we packed bags and spent the night at my mom's house. When we came back the next morning, our Ring doorbell had been removed and placed on the ground. The memory card was gone. Someone had come back. Someone wanted us to know they'd been there. We called the police again. The woman on the phone was honest with us. "Keep everything locked. The fact that they removed your camera could mean they're planning something. Be careful." The whistling and window tapping continued for weeks. We filed report after report, but nothing changed. Then, 3 weeks later, we saw him again. It was late at night. We were in bed scrolling through old camera footage when Emma checked the live feed. She gasped and turned the phone toward me. A man stood in front of our house wearing a black mask and hood. His arms were spread wide, like he was imitating Jesus on the cross. His head was tilted up toward our bedroom window. We froze. He said something, we couldn't hear what, then turned and walked across the street. He stood there, staring at our house for 30 minutes. We called the police. They said it wasn't illegal to stand on public property and look at a house. Even when we described what he'd done on our lawn, they made us feel like we were overreacting. We couldn't sleep for days after that. Then, at 2:52 a.m. on Christmas Eve, I woke up to a notification on my phone. "Someone's outside," I whispered to Emma. "Check the camera." She pulled up the app, and there they were. 2 masked men coming from the side of our house, shining flashlights into our windows. One of them, the same man who'd been harassing us, was holding a crowbar. We screamed and called the police again, but by the time they arrived, the men were gone. Since then, it's gotten worse. He stands across the street almost every day now, pointing at our house, waving, saying things we can't quite hear. Every time we look out, he stares back with that same blank expression. We've installed more cameras, we record everything, but we feel powerless. Just this morning, he was outside again, standing in the snow, staring up at our window. We got it on video, but we don't know what else to do. We're terrified, and we don't know when or if this will ever stop.
Dear viewers, tell us where you are watching from in the comments below. We want to know which state you're in so we can upload a terrifying story about your area next. My family doesn't travel much. We are homebodies, comfortable in our routines, happiest when we're together in familiar places. So when my aunt suggested we rent an Airbnb on one of Alaska's remote lakes for Christmas, everyone was surprised. But we agreed. It had been years since we'd all been together like this, and the idea of spending the holidays somewhere beautiful sounded perfect. My cousin found a place that could fit all 18 of us, a miracle considering the price. The house sat right on the frozen lake with views that stretched for miles. Most of us would stay in the main house, but because of our size, some of us were assigned to a second building, a 2-story garage with bedrooms upstairs. My 3 cousins and I were put in the garage. At first, we didn't mind. We spent the first day enjoying the hot tub, walking on the frozen lake, and soaking in the winter scenery. It wasn't until night that we realized something was wrong. The garage was a mess. The carpet smelled like mold, the bed sheets were stained, and the door latch barely worked. It was clear the cleaners had focused on the main house and ignored this place entirely. My cousin Sophie complained immediately. "No way I'm sleeping on these sheets. We need to wash them." I agreed, but the washing machine was tiny. We could only do one set of sheets at a time, which meant we'd be up late. We passed the time upstairs waiting for the first load to finish. As Sophie talked, I started to feel uneasy. It was a feeling I'd had before, a rare kind of intuition that usually ended badly. I'd felt it once before a break-in at our old house in Detroit. "Stay alert tonight," I told my cousins. "Something feels off." They listened. We all knew what it felt like to not be safe. Around midnight, the dryer buzzed. I went downstairs alone, moved the sheets to the dryer, and brought the clean ones upstairs. My cousins were so happy with how fresh they smelled that they wanted their sheets washed too. So I kept going up and down, load after load, until 2:37 a.m. when we were finally done. We made the beds and collapsed, exhausted. My cousin Rachel insisted we leave the light on, while everyone else fell asleep quickly. I stayed up on my phone, finishing some schoolwork. I've always been a light sleeper. Even half asleep, I stay aware of my surroundings. At 3 a.m., a loud bang hit the garage door. It sounded like someone had thrown their body against it. I sat up, heart pounding, but my cousins didn't move. I told myself it was the wind, even though I knew it wasn't. Then it happened again. The same crash, louder this time. The building shook from the impact. I was fully awake now, watching the room as my cousins slept. No wind could cause that sound. 20 minutes later, the third boom hit. This time, 2 of my cousins bolted upright. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. Rachel nodded, her face pale. "What was that?" "I don't know, but this is the 3rd time." We all agreed no wind could make that sound. Rachel pulled out her phone and texted her mom, my aunt. It was 4:11 a.m. when she responded, realizing something serious was happening. She woke my uncle, who ran outside to check the property. We stayed upstairs, too afraid to move, until we heard knocking. It was my uncle at the door, along with my dad and several of our older male cousins. That's when I knew it was serious. "Grab your things," my uncle said. "You're coming to the main house." "Why?" Sophie asked. "What's wrong?" "There's someone on the property." My heart sank. I threw everything into my suitcase, and we all rushed out of the garage. Once inside the main house, most of the family was already awake from the noise. We sat in the living room, trying to piece together what had happened. I explained the first 2 crashes. My cousins confirmed the third. My aunt explained what happened next. When my uncle went outside to investigate, she followed him. He shouted, "Hey!" at someone standing behind the garage. Right then, the door to the main house slammed shut behind her, even though there was no wind. She feared someone might have slipped inside, so she ran to wake my dad and cousins. After searching, no one was found inside. Then, my uncle described what he saw. A man was standing behind the garage, not hiding, just standing there, staring. When I called out to him, he didn't run. He just walked away and vanished. "Vanished?" I asked. "Into thin air," my uncle said. "The leaves on the ground didn't crunch. There were no footprints in the snow. He just disappeared." My uncle isn't someone who makes up stories. He's logical, serious, and doesn't believe in things he can't see. That made it even scarier. My brothers added that they'd found 2 jester cards, one in the main house, one in the garage. The one in the garage looked twisted and demonic. One cousin pointed out that jesters symbolize mockery. Another said the loud sounds happened at 3 a.m., the so-called devil's hour. It felt like we were being taunted. My uncle had checked for footprints, but only found his and ours, not the man's. Another cousin had driven down the road during the incident to try and spot someone fleeing, but found no one. That day, no one went back to the garage. We squeezed into the main house, on floors, couches, anywhere there was room. My mom gave up her bed so we could sleep more comfortably. On the second night, my mom slept on a couch by the large windows. Around 4 a.m., she woke to footsteps on the porch.
She didn't dare open her eyes. She was afraid of seeing someone looking in. Then she heard someone trying the basement door. It had a weak lock, and my brothers and male cousins were sleeping down there. The door rattled as someone tried to force it open. My mom rushed to the basement, but by the time she got there, no one was outside. All the boys were still asleep. That was our last night. We left Monday instead of staying until Tuesday like we'd planned. On the way home, we couldn't stop talking about what had happened. My mom pointed out that I'd been going downstairs alone during laundry. She thought someone might have been watching me, thinking I was alone in the garage. The timing between my last trip downstairs and the banging lined up too well to be a coincidence. Some of us thought it was a neighbor trying to scare us. Others believed it was something paranormal, especially because of the jester cards. My aunt pointed out that a normal person would have run when my uncle spotted them, but this man didn't run. He just watched, and then he disappeared. We contacted the Airbnb host, who said she'd check the camera footage above the garage door, but we never heard back. It made us wonder, did she know the man? Was he a neighbor? When we first arrived, my sister and cousin had walked along the lake and passed a woman from the house next door. She'd stared at them coldly without any friendliness or greeting, just a hard, unfriendly gaze. The house was in the middle of nowhere. We understood how constant guests might bother locals, but we were respectful. We didn't deserve what happened. This was our first family trip, and even after everything we went through, we hope it won't be our last. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. This story is a testament to the horrors that can lurk beneath the surface of corporate ambition. Tell us where you are watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more tales from the archive.